off to quite the rocky, or wavy, start, I suppose. Wuthering Waves is supposed to be one of the latest in the high-budget gacha gaming space. While the comparison to Genshin Impact is ultimately impossible, is it possible for Wuthering Waves to stand on its own 2 feet?
Is it a ploy to create distrust among us?
Wuwa definitely puts more emphasis on its combat. I'd say it's mildly more skill-based. The combat is probably the most polished element in the game, with it feeling pretty satisfying to take on even basic enemies. The slow-mo dodges and the flashy anime attacks, it's all molded into a well-made system, even if it doesn't feel all that mechanically complex. Some enemies have shield bars that, when broken, will stun them. And you've got this neat equipment system where you can turn into a monkey and hit people with a big log. It's very finely crafted, all things considered. On top of that, you can't have a refined action combat system without interesting moves. And while Wuwa doesn't do that much in this department, the overall available systems make traversal fast-paced with a grappling hook. It's clear to me that the intention is to create a fast-paced environment so that the player is always actively engaged with the game. I will sing praises for Kuro crafting these parts of the game. Having these traversal mechanics makes getting around easy. Your character will actually flip over to reach ledges and scale terrain that you may think would normally be a barrier. However, sometimes the lack of an ability to aim your grapple feels kind of like an oversight. Not that it's bad, it just inhibits you from traveling exactly how you want at all times. There are definitely advantages and disadvantages to this, so I think I might just need to feel out this concept a bit more. So the core pieces of the game, in my opinion, are fine.
Take Iris, for example. Its petals are similarly oval-shaped, but it has double petals. And it's not Viola either, since Viola has notched petals. Then there's also the cliff recluse, but this flower has a longer stamen and an extra petal. Lemongrass is also similar in shape. It's native to the New Federation, and Taiwan people may not be familiar with it, though it has a similar stamen length. It has a conical inflorescence.
The very likely case is that I can just switch the voiceover when I want. But I will not be the first or last person to tell you that the English voiceover is not really that good. I have a hard time criticizing VO because I'm not really involved in that industry. However, the problems with the English VO generally just feel like it's inconsistent and the characters lack direction, or the actors were not given enough direction to perform to the best of their ability. You have a few standouts here and there, like Scar, who fit into their character and anime mannerisms a lot more, but a lot of the cast feels like their deliveries are off, and sometimes it feels like they were barely given one line to understand the context of the situation they were in. Again, I'm not a voice actor, nor a voice director, and I don't wish to discredit the actors given my knowledge of English voice acting in the industry, and how it works. Nor do I want to directly throw criticism at the director or directors working on this game, as it is entirely possible that there are other factors when going into this VO that affected its production. All that being said, in future patches something has to change. While some characters can notably live up to the roles they're given, there is a very obvious gap in quality in the voiceover. And when it comes to English VO in a lot of anime and games, there's a level of hamming it up done, because that's just how anime tends to be. While it's never felt like it's 100% missing the mark, it feels like a lot of the characters are kind of just lacking a piece of their personality because the VO isn't really doing it.
That means it's probably gonna get dangerous here soon.
It is what it is for now, but I really hope this improves in the future. And I guess the main gripe I have with the game is the narrative. It feels very disjointed. There are a couple of moments of interesting storytelling wrapped beneath layers of terminology and concepts that feel like they're not fully introduced. And anime RPGs are no stranger to that. In all honesty, I felt like some of the terminology complaints were a bit overblown. However, a high number of terms I just disregarded because the game kind of just doesn't care if you do. Like, they're not terms you need to know. I'm sure if you dig into the lore, there's probably something a bit more important there, but really not knowing a lot of these terms is not gonna hurt you. I think the problem for me comes at the end of the current chapter. I won't spoil events, but it genuinely feels like I missed 40 to 50% of the story. I feel like the rover is more important than they're proven to be, and this may not be a big deal to some people, but to me it kind of is, because I'm told that I may have been someone important, and I'm so valuable, but that's kind of a bit much when I haven't done anything. The rover just, they haven't proven themselves to be that valuable, at least from my point. Like, they did one thing at the beginning, and that's kind of it. Which might be enough, maybe. I have no clue. And the finale of this current arc feels like it's supposed to be the culmination of important events, so much so that you have like this kind of, I don't really want to spoil it. It brings a lot of characters together that you've seen at some point. It still feels like I'm missing half of the actual important information, like who these characters are, what they do, when I met them. Those all would have been pretty useful. It's yet another story arc in a gacha game with a lot of awesome set pieces, some really well-made animations, and exciting things happening, but without the proper setup to actually make that payoff seem earned. To me, we were maybe about halfway up to this point, but we still needed a whole chunk of development and events to fill out making this feel worthy of a finale. But the story isn't done yet. That makes it very clear we're not done with the story. Obviously, the game just came out, and it's a gacha game, so story's gonna go on. So perhaps something in the future will make up for it, but whether that happens or not, the current existing story stuff is not doing it for me. Not a fan. And I'll give credit where credit is due. Wuwa has actual functional controller support. Yeah, we're moving on from the story thing. That shouldn't even need to be something that I'm pointing out, because controller support for most video games is just normal at this point. Between Genshins, you either do controller or keyboard and mouse, and you can't do both. And whatever Tower Fantasy was doing where they said they had controller support, and I spent 4 hours trying to get the controller to work, and I'm never going back to the game because of that. This game having normal controller support where I can use the controller when I want, and then when I want to switch to the keyboard, I just press a button on my keyboard, and it uses the keyboard. That was kind of a surprise. I hate that this is, for some reason, not normal in modern gacha space, I guess, but, we'll get there one of these days. If I have any gripes about the controller support, it's simply that having to press the D-pad to open a selection wheel is really weird, and I genuinely think they could have just copied most of Genshin's scheme, and it would have been fine. But, whatever. I have also seen a lot of people, whether it's just random people online or content creators, talking about Wuwa being a skill-based game, having skill-based combat gameplay. I've really just seen it here and there. It may or may not really be that blown up. But if you want my genuine opinion, it is more skill-based than Genshin, as of right now. We're not far enough into this game's lifespan to know what the endgame loop is like. But so far, it's not that skill-based. If your idea of skill on a base level is having slow-mo dodges and QTE parries, then sure, those exist here. But let's not pretend that this game is truly that much more difficult than something like Genshin. It's a flashy action game with combat that feels well-crafted. But it's not some kind of test of your abilities, as if mashing a couple buttons isn't going to clear most fights. This isn't a knock on the game itself. This is more commentary on people calling this, skill-based video game. It doesn't really matter. What the game is really doing is just highlighting the times you do something properly to make combat feel good, which is what a lot of games do. It doesn't automatically make it more skillful than another game. It doesn't really work like that. Just because your game has slow-mo dodges does not mean your game is hard. And again, we are way too early into this game's lifespan to be able to tell what the endgame content is going to feel like. I'm open to changing my opinion, but from what I've played, I've definitely played tons of more action games that are actual, fully built around you being skillful at the game. Whatever that means. Skill is entirely up to your opinion as a player. Again, I am not knocking the combat. I find it quite enjoyable. I'm just saying that having a parry and dodge system does not make the game automatically harder or more skillful than others.
Surrender now, and you may die in one piece.
My current opinion on Wuthering Waves is that it's off to a rocky start. The game has solid foundations, and combat feels good. Movement also feels good, but the story and presentation leave a lot to be desired. I know there are multiple factors that could have forced Kuro's hand in releasing the game when they did, but to me this is something that needed at least another few months in the oven. And it definitely shows with how many times they've had to compensate players for the issues at the game's launch. You know, let's not forget sharing personal information by accident, the whole refunds thing that happened, the game being buggy on launch. I didn't experience as much of that because I didn't start playing until about almost a week and a half after the game came out. But I hope Kuro can continue to improve the game from here. And for the time being, I'll at least consider that things can get better. But you're coming up against steep competition, and no matter what you do, comparisons will be drawn. So here's to a hopeful, bright future for Wuthering Waves. And let me know your opinions on Wuthering Waves in the comments down below, or wherever it may be now. Who knows? You could be watching this video in 2 weeks after it came out, and the comments could be there, it could be there, it could be up there. There may not be comments anymore. Who knows? Things keep changing on this platform. Then every time I release a video, something gets outdated. Anyways, you could leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe to the channel if you want. I don't know if I will cover more Wuthering Waves in the future, but we'll see. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.
Be able to pull it away with our grapple.